Welcome to the Startup Support Surgery podcast, where we light the entrepreneurial spark in medics and healthcare professionals. Join me, Dr. Jo Watkins, GP, business coach and co-founder of The How People, on a journey to discover where your medical know-how meets the business world. This will help you find some clarity on how to balance work, passions and family so that you can gain more freedom and control over your life, but also continue to help people, which is actually why most of us went into medicine to start with. Embarking on this entrepreneurial adventure is not easy. It is a roller coaster of emotions, but it's hugely rewarding and exciting in the process. Drawing on my 20 years of blending medicine and business as a GP, I am here to share experiences, insights and lessons. Expect lively chats, expert interviews and real-life stories from medics who have taken their own path. Let's break free from traditional healthcare norms and explore more innovative ways of making a real difference to people's health and well-being, along with paving the way for a brighter future for us as healthcare professionals. Oh, don't miss my free PDF called From Stethoscope to Startup, which is an 11-page guide in the show notes full of practical help and advice. This is your roadmap to kickstarting your journey with us. Enjoy the show. So before we begin today's conversation, I wanted to just pause for a second. This is the 50th episode of the Startup Support Surgery podcast. 50 episodes. I was never sure that there was going to be more than 12. So it feels slightly surreal, if I'm honest. And I just want to say a massive, massive thank you. Because podcasts don't magically exist. Behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes on. And a big shout out to Pete from Monkey Pants Production at this point, because I could not have done this without you. But podcasts also will only exist if people press play and choose to listen. And the fact that you have chosen to spend your time here with me, whether this is the first time or whether this is the 50th time you've done it, when you could be listening to literally anything else, that's not lost on me. And I really, really appreciate that. Your time is precious wherever you listen to this. And I'm really, really grateful that you decide to share some of your time with me. So I did think about doing a best bits episode or one of those sort of slightly self-indulgent milestone specials, but it just didn't feel right because this podcast has always been about having really good conversations. It's about hearing other people's ideas. It's about hearing real stories from people that are out there building businesses alongside their real life. So instead, because it's March and it's also International Women's Day this month, I've decided to use this 50th milestone to highlight 4 brilliant episodes, which are conversations with 4 female founders who are building businesses around their lives and not the other way around. These are incredible women who are navigating burning ambition, family, identity, money, growth, all of the things. And they're not doing it perfectly. They're not pretending it's easy, but they are being intentional with how they grow their businesses. I genuinely couldn't think of a better person to begin this mini series in March 2026 than Erin Thomas-Wong. Erin is a small business mentor and author of How to Build a Life-Friendly Business. She's been building and growing businesses for 17 years through motherhood, relocation, and reinvention. And she's one of the clearest voices in the UK when it comes to building something sustainable and life-friendly. Through her Cocoon membership, her podcast, her live events, her one-to-one mentoring, she helps women create success on their own terms without burning out, trying to keep up with someone else's definition of success. In this conversation, we talk a lot about trust. We talk about ambition. We talk about redefining success. And we talk about the long game and the fact that, as everybody knows, business really is a marathon and not a sprint. And Erin's random fact, which has actually just floored me, is that she has danced on stage with Christina Aguilera.
It is true. So I used to work in television and I worked on the MTV Awards in Barcelona. And I mean, the kind of, the little secret behind this is it was during rehearsals, but they basically said, quick, we need extras to come on stage. And it was when she did Dirty. So she was like in her chaps, and we had to stand behind and dance. So I'm not a dancer. I was like just kind of on the stage with her. Yeah, it was one of those crazy experiences being on this massive stage. And I just felt a little bit sorry for her because she was just stood there all on her own and like not talking to anyone, and I just thought, actually, that looks like quite a lonely life.
Wow. Not able to interact with you, wearing next to nothing and being told to move around from one place to the next.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I think it's probably not quite as glamorous as it maybe looks, but good for you. I hope there's some photographic evidence somewhere of this.
There is not.
It was a moment. I love it. Absolutely brilliant. And this is, as I just said in the introduction, one of those conversations that we found each other, probably LinkedIn, I'd imagine, found each other for obvious reasons, jumped into our DMs and just started chatting and then made this happen. Erin, the reason I think we first connected is because you have just written a book, which we are going to talk about. And that book, when I saw the picture of the book, I was like, oh my God, I've got to speak to this woman. And we will share the screenshots of the two of us and our books, because you are the life-friendly business mentor. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're based down in Southampton,
Bournemouth.
Bournemouth, and you are all about helping people build businesses that fit their lives. And that is something that is so close to my heart. So tell me how this all happened. Why don't you just sort of verbally vomit at me, and then I will sort of pick things apart.
Lovely. That is such a nice visualization.
I know.
So, as I just mentioned, I used to work in TV and thought I would always work in TV, and then got pregnant at 29 and had my baby. It was not what I was expecting. I had a really traumatic birth experience. I couldn't breastfeed. I was very sleep deprived. And I started thinking, how on earth am I going to go back to the world of TV? Because it was absolutely all consuming. I loved it, but it was, when you work in that kind of industry, it is your life. And basically, I think my son was 6 months old, and I thought I would be a real earth mother and just love being at home. And I just felt so anxious, so lost. I just needed something for me. So I was quite fortunate that I got voluntary redundancy. And I actually ended up buying a franchise of a jewelry company. That was my first experience in business. My friends and family thought I was absolutely nuts. And I can't really explain it. It was just, I was absolutely drawn to it. And it basically opened up this whole world of business for me. And then I got a bit addicted to starting businesses. And this is actually my fifth business. This business is now 10 years old. And really, the kind of transition into this business was one of the businesses I had was in West London called Ealing Mums in Business. And we then had the opportunity to move to Abu Dhabi for my husband's job. So that was quite a big curveball. But we thought, what an amazing opportunity. So by then we had two kids. I left my three businesses in the UK and we went over to Abu Dhabi. And once again, that's another story of how hard I found that unexpectedly, really, because I thought it'd be amazing living the expat lifestyle, but actually, once again, very anxious and, just never felt grounded there. And so I threw myself into learning more about digital marketing. And I thought, right, I want a business that can go with me wherever we go. So that's when I created what's now Life Friendly Business, but back then it was launched as Making Mumpreneurs. So it was kind of a continuation of the Ealing Mums in Business that had been in person. It was bringing that online. So that was 10 years ago. And we weren't happy. We didn't enjoy the time in Abu Dhabi, unfortunately. So we came home and we moved to Bournemouth to be by the sea. And my husband went self-employed because had massive burnout from the experience in Abu Dhabi. So we've kind of designed our lives now very, very consciously. Like you say, life first. Like these are the important things, and having those kind of difficult experiences really amplify that. And my business has kind of grown and evolved ever since that.
Wonderful. And like you say, that's it, that those knockbacks and experiences are all part of this, aren't they? And that, without those, um, these sort of different twists and turns that we take in our lives wouldn't happen. And I would love to come back and talk about that piece, because I think resilience and learning from our mistakes, or not mistakes, but learning from our difficult experiences is just so important. Thank you for sharing all of that. Let's go back to that feeling of Erin having just had a baby and leaving this sort of world, because I think a lot of people I work with are medics, and similar to the world of TV or the corporate world or somewhere that's completely immersed you in your sort of early 20s through your 20s, a lot of people have this kind of like, oh God, hang on a minute, you've got this young baby to keep alive, your hormones are everywhere, you're thinking, how the hell am I going to make this work? You talked about feeling anxious and lost at that stage. Was that because you were, did you feel that was more related to being at home with the baby, or do you think that a lot of that anxiety was about what you were going to have to go back to?
I think I really lost my sense of identity, because I'd always been that person who worked in TV, and I loved it. I loved going out into London and meeting people, and they'd say, "What do you do?" And you'd say, "I work in TV," and their eyes would light up. It was exciting. It was all those things. And I was a production manager, so I was organizing shoots and, writing schedules, and I thought having a baby would be the same. I thought I would set a schedule and the baby would follow the schedule. And of course, I that was absolutely blown out the water. So everything that I knew about, like, being organized and doing all those things. And I mean, it was, I just felt completely sideswiped, I think is probably a good description. And also my baby was very ill a lot. So I was anxious because of that. I was sleep deprived. I was drawn to starting this business, but the people that knew me were like, why would you want to leave TV? Why would you want to work on your own when you're such a team player and very gregarious? Absolutely true. And I can't, even now, I mean, I love it now and I love being on my own now, but I didn't used to. So all these things, I guess it was just, and now I understand that there is this term matrescence about, becoming a mother and the whole shift in identity and, like you say, the hormones and everything going on. And I think I was in this absolute storm, and I love the fact that it happened how it did, but I think it took me years to really build my confidence in business. And for a long time, I just would constantly, internally be putting myself down, and I didn't want to call myself a business owner and all this stuff. And so, my only regret would be that it took me so long to really own it.
Yeah, interesting. And that's something I'm sure you see repeating in other people that you support. And it's that concept, isn't it, that you were in TV, top of your game, probably, didn't, that confidence had grown over years and years of experience, putting the reps in, doing the work, and then suddenly you're like a fish out of water in this new world of business, learning everything as you go along. And that doesn't that's not a confident place to be, is it? You're a learner again, and everybody talks about imposter syndrome, but essentially you're starting a new skill and you've got to learn, haven't you?
And there's no job description.
Yeah, like having a
So
baby.
yeah, exactly. So, when you're in a career and you're employed, you know what you need to do, hopefully, most of the time to do a good job and to impress people and your boss and all those kind of things. When you run your own business, you have to create your own job description and you have to keep yourself accountable and all these things. And it is, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I find it absolutely liberating to be in that position. But it's also daunting because everything's on you, all the decisions.
Yeah, all the decisions, anything that gets done, the firing, the hiring, the client acquisition, the marketing, the deciding whether or not you need a new computer now or next week. Like nobody does this stuff for you, do they? It's a series of decisions and I always say to people that whole clocking off, medics don't tend to work 9 to 5, but generally, we finish our day and we go home. Yes, there may be bloods to check at home these days. People seem to be doing that more and more in the evenings, but generally we walk away and we switch off and we come in the door and we are parents or partners. But running a business, you have to have that ability to sort of boundary yourself as well, don't you? And be able to switch off yourself because no one's going to tell you to do that. Is that something that you found a difficult shift as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like, and yeah, especially when you're working at home, you could work all the hours. There is always more that you can do. And so that unfortunately is what leads so many women that I work with to just constantly feel behind because they know there's more they can do. But we have to, put that boundary and say, it's enough for today. That's it. And we've had so many conversations over the years about how people put that boundary in place for themselves. And I'll never forget one client said that she wears a lanyard and she literally takes the lanyard off and hangs it up when it's time to stop work. And like that is such a brilliant, prop to use. But I mean, I also make sure that I mindfully shut down the computer. I don't just close the lid. I actually shut it down because I know that if I've left it on, then I'll just think, oh, I'll just nip and do that. And it's never just that, is it? you know, and so, yeah, it's really hard. And I think also one of the things that I really noticed with my husband is it took him years to be okay with not sitting at his desk between 9 and 6. Like you don't have to be sat at your computer to be working or to be being productive. And that we're so it's so ingrained in us that that is work. And what are you doing if you're not actually working? It's that, but we don't need to work in that way. We
Yeah,
can work flexibly and actually probably be more productive than someone who's sat in an office all day.
absolutely. So this is where we get to this concept of building what we're building, whether it's a business, whether it's a portfolio career. A lot of my clients still working a couple of days in the NHS, and some people are working full time in the NHS, and I do not advocate for people leaving their place of work to run a business, particularly at the beginning, because finances generally take time. So we're talking in this world where people are making choices about how they work. Um, we make the rules, right, don't we? So this, from your point of view, what does life friendly sort of mean when it comes to building a business?
For me, life friendly means working around my own energy and also having the flexibility to be able to prioritize my kids, my life, my parent, my mum, if she needs me. But also, it's about working to my own measures of success rather to than what other people tell me that my measures should be. So, yeah, being able to go and walk the dog down at the beach at 2 o'clock because it's glorious weather. That kind of thing. Like I can do that. I've got the flexibility to do that. I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't really work during school holidays. I don't book any calls during that time. If I decide to do a bit of work, that's fine. I can do that, but I'm not beholden to those kind of calls, which make me feel stressed. Which it gets tangled up, doesn't it, with the kind of parent that you want to be, and you just know that the kids won't need you, and then just as you're about to go on a call, something happens, and I it's really hard to have one leg in and one leg out, and I've just kind of made that boundary. My kids are getting older now; they're 17 and 13, so that's going to start changing again, and I probably will start working a bit more during school holidays. But it's about that evolving nature of my life and being able to evolve the business with it. But I did want to say about the measures of success because this is something that really stayed with me when we were in Abu Dhabi because obviously, working somewhere like that, it's all about status and it's all about money. And it's, and it's all about kind of how nice your apartment is or your house and your car and going out to six-star hotels for brunches. And I was really struggling there. And I would be messaging my friends back home, telling them that I was really down and missing home and everything. And they were literally saying to me, "But your photos look amazing. Like, it's blue skies and palm trees." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm actually really miserable." And we've got this weird link with success, happiness, like, picture perfect palm trees, that should make you feel happy and successful. But I don't think that's right for everyone. I mean, for some people, and I think kind of recognizing actually for me, success is doing something where I feel like I'm helping people, where I'm making a positive impact, where I'm there for my kids when they need me, where I'm not feeling burnt out and stressed. I'm not feeling sick on a Monday morning about what's coming in the week ahead. Like they're my measures of success.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a slide in one of the talks that I do exactly on that. And it talks about the importance of working that out for yourself. And for me, it's not about money, impact 100%. I love having that ripple effect of supporting other people doing things that they love. But being able to go to every school play, being able to drop everything and go and pick your kids up, like you say, adapt for elderly relatives, adapt to the situation that your family is facing. And I did a interview with Lucy Legal the other day, and she said, my measure of success is that I didn't miss the Scarecrow's wedding. That's ultimately, if you don't miss the family show, whereas previously in her corporate job, it just wasn't a thing. So building a business that suits your life and what you want your life to look like. And I think when you talk about things like school holidays, it I think there are people listening to this that will be like, well, that's just unrealistic. That's just never going to happen. And I would reiterate that I think as you start out in business, before you start worrying about posting on social media or what color pink your logo is, this is the groundwork that I'm sure you do with your clients and I do with mine. Like, it's the first thing. It's like, what are you doing this for? Why, what are you wanting life to look like? What does success look like for you? And for me, that comes off the back of not doing this right before in other businesses that I've owned, like kind of learning a little bit the hard way. Have you had that experience? You talked about having 5 other businesses. Have you run businesses that haven't been life first?
Well, it's really interesting actually because my first business, it was life friendly and then it was not. And it was life friendly because it was making jewelry. So at that point I had a 6-month old. My first son was 6-month old and I bought this franchise and I thought this is perfect because at the weekends I can go and do the stalls in the markets and sell the jewelry, and then during the week when I had little bits of childcare, that's when I made the jewelry. So that worked. And then I had a second son, and I did manage to kind of take a bit of maternity leave and all those things. So, once again, still really flexible. Then my eldest went to school. Well, I don't want to be stood on a market stall Saturday and Sunday when he's at home. So, like, it changed. So I ran that business for 5 years and luckily I was able to sell it. But, I think that's where we have to be really conscious about the season of life that we're in. And I think that what you just said as well, like, this is the thing that I keep seeing happen is people are falling into the trap of listening to the hustle heavy advice online about basically sacrifice everything until you reach a certain level of success and then you can add your work life balance in. But you're absolutely right. Like if you don't start that from the beginning and think about your capacity first, then you're just going to be chasing your tail. And I mean, running your own business is not easy and it's not the easy option at all. And so many people are burning out before they even get to any kind of measure of success because they've just done that thing of going all in and sacrificing everything else that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And see this particularly in service-based businesses, so coaches, people offering one-to-one services online. To go into that thinking, right, okay, I want to, that sometimes people will say, well, I just want to work 3 days a week, and I want to see people one to one. And then we look at the actual, you've got 2 kids, you want to be there for the school run, either side of the school run. Like we literally sit down and map out what this will look like. Well, actually, how many clients can you have back to back in a day? What about the prep? What about the uploading and downloading of Zoom calls? What about the summaries? Like that's the sort of way that I think it would be good to approach things before you start. And it's constant tweaking. Like you say, when I remember I sort of used to start my Zoom calls at 9. So quite often I'd have like maybe 4 calls between 9 and 3 with uploading, download. There's literally no time for anything else. And I had a mentor that said that she'd shifted all of her Zoom calls to start that little bit later and give you that couple of hours of flexibility in the morning to do some deep work, some writing, some content creation, whatever. Or if it's really nice weather, go for a coffee and meet up with somebody for a chat, because that's okay. And then I now I don't start on Zoom until 11. And I always do my group Zoom call at 2 p.m. so that if we're in Asia, it's 10 p.m. And if we're in Canada, it's 6 a.m. So all of these are very, very deliberate decisions. And I think that's what this is about, isn't it? It's being intentional and deliberate and not letting business suck the life out of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest game changers for me is my Monday morning CEO time. So every morning I block out my calendar until 11 o'clock and I go to a local cafe. I have to get out the house. So as soon as my youngest leaves the house at 8, I go to this cafe, and it's just such a ritual. And it basically allows me to transition from the weekend, being mum and all those things, into my business. And I just take that time to be super intentional about the week ahead. What's coming up, where does my focus need to be, and that, yeah, intentional, strategic, all of those things. And I often find that my week is the most productive at the beginning of the week, and then it peters off towards the weekend, and that's fine. That's absolutely how I work, and I've learned that my energy works like that, and I just go with it. And I think, I speak to people all the time. This is and When I'm doing training, the CEO time now is just being reflected back to me again and again about that has made such a difference. But most of us feel like we have to be reactive immediately to the clients, and it's just like that's the culture we were in when we were employed by a boss, because yes, you got in on a Monday morning and you had to do whatever they needed, and now we get to choose. So I think taking that time to be proactive before being reactive just shifts the way that you approach your week and just makes you feel much more in control.
I love that. I'll be passing that on to my community. And I think if your GP day is a Monday, Tuesday, then do that on a Wednesday, whenever that shift is for you. And I love that people often talk about that lack of commute, that lack of like downtime between dropping the kids off at school and starting work. So having something that is your ritual to begin and end your week, or begin and end that time that you're going to be working on your business. So I love this concept of the lanyard at the end of the day. I just think that's brilliant. But just allowing yourself to not be responsive to the people that are requiring your attention. So, for me, that's my WhatsApp feed, my emails, messages on LinkedIn. If I get involved in that, that's like 2 hours of time before you've even started, isn't it? So doing this sort of bigger picture thinking, followed by actually what's the stuff that I need to get done this week. Let's prioritize that. And then, do you have a system with your emails, just out of interest? Do you do this kind of lunchtime email thing, or do you have anything that you would sort of tips around that?
No, I think you'd probably be a bit horrified if you saw my inbox, because I'm one of these people that doesn't file emails. They're just all like, so I use like an action label, so I know I need to respond to people. But then we've had this conversation so many times in the community, because we've got lots of virtual assistants, and they're like, Erin, what are you doing? But I'm like, I just use a search box for the person's name for the email to come up. But yeah, so I do dip in and out of email, but I remember being told by a coach years ago, and she's so right, that, if you fall into that trap of, say, you're getting the kids ready for school and you just have a quick look in your inbox, And the problem is that you don't even have to open the email. Your brain is already trying to work out what that email might say and what that might mean for you. And then your brain is trying to work that out. You're trying to get the kids ready. And that's when you get really snappy and you're really irritated because you're like, because your brain's like, hang on, I'm trying to work this out. And like, we do it to ourselves. We do it to ourselves. And this is where we have to take responsibility, I think, for those things. And don't get me wrong, I still do it every now and then, but it is recognizing like actually we do have control over when we decide to go into, like you say, do the reactive work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about something else that you mentioned before we start talking about books, which I do want to talk about. You were saying that when you bought that jewelry shop, people said to you, "Oh, you're mad! Like you're going to work on your own. You're a people person. I can, you are obviously really gregarious and great with people because I've seen what you're doing online now. But you had this working alone thing that other people identified in you that might be a problem. And obviously, as you grow your businesses and as you've done your 5 businesses and as you've worked with other mumpreneurs and you now support other people, that working on your own thing comes up a lot, doesn't it? And I know that you really value community, as I do. Can you just explain to anybody listening here who maybe is starting out on their own and maybe hasn't found their tribe or isn't part of a community, how important that is for people that are starting businesses, particularly mums?
Once again, this is a game changer, just like the CEO time idea. The community, the people that you surround yourself with really, really affects how you show up and the support that you give yourself by being around other people. And for me, it has mostly been women. Women supporting women is something really magical in a lot of ways. And I think, when I first started out, I was living in West London, and I tried to go to all these like business networking things, with my jewelry business, and I just felt like a fish out of water. I felt like a small little girl. There would be, the men in suits and accountants and lawyers, and I was like, oh my goodness. And it just made me shrink. And that's why actually my business partner at the time and I set up Ealing Mums in Business, because we started meeting other women who had started their businesses after children, blah, blah, blah. And, I realized then the difference it made to all of us to be together and to be able to talk openly about the challenges that we were facing. And I think that's what I am really proud of, that I have built a community where people feel safe to be really honest. And I'm totally over the pretending everything's amazing. And I hate seeing those posts on, there's so much stuff on social media about people flashing money and how much they're earning. And I know there's a lot of money mindset stuff that I've probably got to deal with as well, but it's making so many of us feel like we're failing. And to actually surround yourself with like-minded people who are just on the same level as you, and have the same challenges, and it's really inspiring to see how other people are dealing with problems. So yes, I mean, I love working on my own, but I'm surrounded by people every day online, and I do some stuff in person. I think that's the one thing as well, is that I really believe strongly you can get that connection online, just like we're talking now. And and actually online is amazing because you can be sat in your own home, whether you've got kids at home or someone else that you're caring for, you can still have that human connection that we all need. So I think, yeah, it's so important to give ourselves that support, because it's flipping lonely, and you're stuck in your own head a lot, and you don't get a chance to talk things through. So yeah, it's absolutely invaluable.
It's vital, isn't it? And I think what you touched on there with your previous networking experience, I think that's what people imagine networking is. And I think I still find the term really uncomfortable because I just love talking to people. I'm just super curious. I just love other humans. And actually, that's the most important part of business, is building relationships with people, opening doors, talking to people, finding those people that are aligned with either maybe it's the service that you provide, or maybe it's the way that you do things, like us, that sort of life first, life friendly thing cuts through everything that we do. So therefore we were always going to have lots in common. You've got to find the people. I've been to many, particularly with my first business. Weirdly, my first business was granola, and it was exactly the same as you. Weekend markets, doing stuff in the daytime when the kids were younger, and long story, but the same concept. And with that, I used to go to breakfast meetings, like these awful networking meetings with lots of people in suits, really formal, really stuffy. And like you say, I just shrink, feel dreadful, run away, think. And also, it was like tick the box. I did a networking event. I spoke to somebody and got their business card. That's not what this is about. This is about finding your people. And there are groups everywhere. So there are groups online, but there are groups in lots of geographical areas now. There's one near us called She Thrives, run by Crystal and Hells, who need a shout out because they're brilliant. And going there, it was like, oh God, like this lovely relief. It was like, here are people that I can just, like you say, be honest, stand up and burst into tears and say, bloody hell, this is hard. And people have got your back. It's not about like
Yeah.
how brilliantly you're doing. It's like, do you know what? I'm struggling with this too. Or, has anybody else ever felt like walking away? Somebody said the other day. And it was like, everyone hands up.
Yeah, we had a similar. It was a goosebump moment at. I do an annual Momentum Day in person, and there's going to be 70 women this year. It gets bigger and bigger each year. But we had one of my favorite parts of the day is the Q&A at the end, where we have all the speakers and I'm there. And someone was really quite emotional, and she said that her partner wasn't supporting her with the business, and she didn't know what to do. And I just kind of looked out to the room, and I could see everyone nodding, and I just said, can you just put your hand up if you've got someone close to you in your life that doesn't support? And everyone put their hand up. And even now, years on, it was like, whoa, it was such a magical moment where everyone looked around the room and realized that everyone there had had this kind of similar experience of not feeling supported. And it's just, yeah, to be in that environment it really does make the difference with how confident you feel about what you're doing, and your resilience as well. When you have challenges, to realize that you've seen and you've heard about other people that have overcome similar things.
Love that. Let's touch on the kind of Instagram hustle culture, bro marketing, earning 10 grand a week from a hammock in Bali after 4 weeks of showing up online. You just need to do this, you just need to do that. And then, download this PDF and your life will be complete. There's a lot of that around at the moment, isn't there? We've seemed to have gone through cycles, and it's like, I turn on my Instagram feed and I'm just like, this is ludicrous that this stuff
Yeah.
is there.
I really struggle with it. I feel like there's a lot of this, like you say, this is how I've made 10 grand a day, and all you need to do is follow these steps and you'll be able to make that money too. And once again, this is, the whole life friendly approach as well is about doing things that align with you and align with your own values and everything. And people are buying these courses and then being like, well, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't, like that feels icky to me. It's like it's like it's somebody else's strategy which is designed around them and their zones of genius, and we need to be designing our own. But I mean, even I find myself getting caught in this rabbit hole of like, there's a magic pill. What's the magic pill? Maybe that's the magic pill. That's the thing. That's going to change everything. Shall I buy it? Shall I buy it? Like we're all guilty of falling down those rabbit holes. And yeah, I think even I find it difficult sometimes to speak out about this stuff, because you think, oh, but what if people think that I'm not ambitious? What if people think, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, this is ridiculous. And, there's a stat in the UK, I'm pretty sure this is still valid, that the average UK salary for a full-time person is 35K. And so many of the women that I work with would be really happy to be earning 35K flexibly, running their business with a sense of purpose, helping people around their kids. And yet we're kind of told as entrepreneurs, if you're not aiming to earn 6 or 7 figures, what the hell are you doing? And it's like, where has that come from? And once again, this is the whole thing about measures of success. Because yeah, we all need, and don't get me wrong, money is a driving factor. We need to live. We want to have nice lives. We want to go on holiday. We want to have all those things. But I think when there's all this kind of toxic bro marketing messaging about, earning 50K a month, it's just it compounds and it makes you it makes us shrink, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, it totally does. And I think you do have to. It's difficult because you do have to start learning, and obviously people once they. I mean, when I was on this sort of different path from having run the granola business and then run a property and then going traveling with the kids, I had this period of like self coaching for about 6 months where I was literally surrounding myself by everything and anything to kind of work out. I said, I just want to be paid for being me wherever we are in the world, top of the mountain, middle of the rainforest. That's what I want on my computer. And I want to work and have an impact and work with brilliant people and do good stuff. And I immerse myself in the learning, the podcasts, the books. And I did lean into that narrative, not of how easy it was, because I wasn't naive having run businesses before that it was easy, but that was was possible in a probably a quite an unrealistic timeline, and also that was some sort of success measure on the way. So people need to learn, don't they? They need to, but I think you've got to be really mindful of what you're learning at what time. And I think what you and I probably both do within our own communities with our own clients is probably that really early groundwork that it's very easy to think that you don't need. And you kind of skip over to then go straight into one of these sort of big generic programs. I was in a sort of membership that promised me the earth right at the beginning. And it was one of these sort of £47 a month membership with 5,000 other people. And you're just a little box on a screen learning from people that have no understanding of your life and live a completely different life, not a life that I would want to live. And there I am sitting on a Zoom call, absorbing their every word. Um, so you've got to learn, haven't you? This isn't about not investing in your learning, but it's kind of that learning from the right people at the right time, or that sort of, how do you find your people to learn from? How do you we both charge money for people to come and learn from us. So why is that any different to what we're seeing online?
Yeah, and I think this is why, as business owners, we need opportunities for people to get to know us before they buy from us, like podcasts, books, videos online. Like that all helps, doesn't it? Because, I've heard a lot lately that we're in this trust recession because people are just so fed up with all the hype that we're being sold and yeah, like over promising and under delivering. And I think word of mouth when it comes to working with people is really invaluable. And a lot of, in fact, I've been having conversations today about this, about how do you represent yourself online in the way that people, naturally would talk about you and refer people to you. So, I mean, yeah, and I think that there is a lot for, even though I'm very big about the online being online, I think meeting someone in person, whether that's in the flesh or on a Zoom call, you know, having that interaction first really helps build the trust. But I think trying people out, and I think also just, I think sometimes we see these really successful people and we don't quite feel aligned, but we think, well, I'm probably doing something wrong and they must be doing it right. So therefore, I should follow them. Just trust your gut.
Yeah,
Trust your
absolutely.
gut.
Trust your gut. And this is what we're talking about, is this long form content. So not posting on social media and worrying about how good your reel is or where you put your text, but it's kind of like, if you find somebody, being able to absolutely immerse, almost like binge their content. So this is where I think of like books, YouTube, podcasts. So you can binge listen to all of these podcasts, 50 episodes full of amazing nuggets of gold. You can read Erin's book, you can read my book, you can watch a YouTube channel, and you get to know whether this is somebody that you align with, that you find, think of yourself working with that person, you can actually picture that situation. And this is something that I talk about a lot now, is that content is almost, with AI and with the ability to make a PDF in 2 seconds, that 5 years ago, that whole like, well, I need a lead magnet, and I've still got my, 11-page guide to whatever is still my lead magnet on my podcast because I haven't changed it. But getting in front of somebody on Zoom, particularly for my medics who are all mostly service providing people who are going to ultimately work with people one-to-one on Zoom, running a workshop on a webinar, even if you're absolutely petrified, getting those people into a room and explaining with them the value that you can deliver, the way that you can help people on that call and subsequently, I think is at the moment the best way of cutting through that noise, isn't it? If you haven't got the book or the podcast or the YouTube yet, build a workshop, get it out there on Eventbrite, and get people into that Zoom room with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that stops people is the fact that when you run your own business, suddenly you're having to sell yourself. Whereas if you're working for the NHS, you're, behind that big logo, aren't you? And somebody else is finding the clients for you and bring them in. And one quote that really, really helped me, and I always talk about it with my clients, is that selling is simply you offering someone the opportunity to help them. And so when you're doing that kind of webinar, like that's all you're doing. You're giving them all the information that they need in order to make a decision about whether you're the right person for them. And I think that really takes the pressure off, like thinking, oh, I need this fancy webinar and I need to be able to sell and do the upsell at the end. And it's like, oh, it feels so hard. But if you just think about it in terms of like people need that information to make a decision. And when you said just now about having a binge and consuming all that information, have you heard Daniel Priestley? And I think I've got this right. He talks about the 7-11-4 framework, and that's 7 hours of content across 11 different touch points across 4 different platforms. And like to think about having 7 hours of content for someone to consume, obviously can feel a bit overwhelming when you're just starting out. But yeah, that can be blog posts, it could be email content, it could be YouTube videos, it could be a book, it could be podcast. And I mean, my podcast is 3 years old now. And in this last year, I've had more and more people say to me they've listened to every single episode and then they've come to work with me. So it's a marathon.
Yeah,
It's not a sprint, but these things do work.
they do. Right. So let's talk about the book then. So podcasts, we need to signpost people too. We'll put that into the show notes. But
Thank you.
you have written and launched a book.
How to build a life-friendly business.
And I want you to tell me a little bit about the kind of process of writing a book, what you've enjoyed, what you haven't enjoyed, and tell us a little bit more about it.
So I actually heard a brilliant podcast which inspired the way that I wrote the book. And it talked about writing a book. I think she said the 3 S's: your story, the current situation, and your solution. And I just thought, bingo, I've got that. I can do that. And so, I talk about my own journey with building businesses around having kids and things like that. And then I talk about the current landscape for female entrepreneurs. And then I talk about my solution, which is my life friendly approach. So I actually have had a course for quite a long time called the Life Friendly Business Blueprint, which had 5 modules. And I was thinking, how can I write the book around those 5 modules? And I've actually tweaked them a little bit to make sure that I'm covering everything I want. But I basically, wrote about that framework. So I kept it really simple. I thought I don't want it to be like a long book for the sake of a long book, because I don't ever have time to read. I'm not a massive reader. I only really read business books. So it's nice and short. It can be read in a couple of hours. And it's as simple as that. So, for anyone as well that's thinking about writing a book, it was so liberating to kind of just take that pressure off myself and just think it doesn't need to be massive. And I think actually having it as a quick read has helped women read it, digest it, and take action on it. And the feedback so far has been the fact that they felt a shift in terms of how they approach things going forward. A lot of, I need to simplify, all these things. So I just really wanted to give them food for thought on how things could be rather
Yeah,
than how they are now.
I love that. And I think that story, situation, solution, beautiful framing. And September last year, I didn't rush, but I had a book that I basically had in the notes section of my phone, which I'm sure is where yours started as well. And I decided that I wanted to get it out for a conference. And I have missed this story bit out. That's what my book is missing. So I wrote a book. I had it proofread by about 20 people, and I managed to get it to the conference where I was. And I opened the front page. Oh no, I didn't. I sent a proof home for us to have at home. And my husband, who is attention to detail anaesthetist, you'd kind of need them to be attention to detail, opened the book, and at the bottom of the first page found a spelling mistake that literally 20 people have read the book. So immediately I kind of fell out of love with it. Immediately I was like, I don't like this book. And there was something wrong with the spacing on the second page. So the minute I saw it, I didn't fall in love with it. And I think that's what I've subsequently struggled with. So I've kind of hidden it. It's available on Amazon. It's a really helpful read that somebody, Dave Hindmarsh, reviewed the other day for me. I was like, really, I must get this book out there. But the other thing that I've realized I haven't got is that story, that situational thing, because you're speaking from lived experience and I'm speaking from lived experience. And unless somebody sees that and hears that and reads that lived experience in your words, it doesn't matter how good my framework, my solution is. And, I talk a bit about the situation, but mainly mine is solution focused. People have got to understand who you are and why you are able to speak about this. You've run 5 businesses, you've got 2 children, you've kind of made all the mistakes, worn all the hats, done all the things. And that probably comes across, I would imagine, in your book. And that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but the great thing about self-publishing, I'm assuming you self-published as well, is the fact that you can change it. And, but I do think that because this is my second book, my first book was a collection of interviews with women in my community. It was called Mumpreneur Revolution. And that came out during lockdown. So we couldn't have any kind of book launch or anything. But I felt very vulnerable when that went out, but I could also hide behind everyone else's stories. I topped and tailed it. So this time it's like all me. And I did have that kind of moment of vulnerability, like at the beginning of January, I was like, oh my goodness. But actually, it's fine. As soon as I started getting feedback from people, but it is a weird thing, like writing a book. And even though it's like, having a podcast is also a little bit vulnerable when you first start out. But I don't know, there's something very, I don't know, about it's this tangible book, like just everything that you think in this book, just handing it over to someone is a very weird experience.
Well, you've inspired me to write the beginning of the book and get it back out there, because I am so passionate about women, mothers, people from the healthcare space, people from the corporate sector, people that are looking to be able to grow something that they're really invested in, really passionate about, that's making a massive difference, that enables them to be the mum that they want, or do the for me it's about around travel. We have integrated 3 months of travel into our lives, and that's possible because of the way that my husband's approached his job, and he's annualized his hours, but also I'm not tied to a salaried job. I'm able to work from my computer. So this is something that I'm so passionate about. So to know that your book's out there, your podcast's out there, your community's out there, please, people, get in touch with Erin and buy her book. And then one day you'll be able to buy my book. And they are like matching books. When you put them together, they are exactly what everybody needs, I think. So we'll have to have like some sort of like 2-for-1 deal or something as people go through. Right, brilliant. I'm going to throw this at you just in case they're on the top of your head. You've shared so much gold, and I really appreciate your honesty and all of the advice you've already given. What would be your sort of one piece of advice or three things or whatever that you would say to that kind of, that maybe that Erin who's breastfeeding that first baby at home, feeling anxious, feeling lost, feeling like I can't possibly go back to this world. What am I going to do next? What sort of advice would you give somebody in that situation who's maybe thinking about starting a business?
First of all, it's all gonna be okay. I think we need to know that, don't we? We need to know it's all gonna be okay. And I think, it's very common to in a moment like that, whether it's having a baby or having an illness or someone close to you having an illness, like have that moment of what do I really want? And I would say to talk about it to as many people as you can, but also trust that as time evolves, that you will get clarity on that. But also the fact that you don't need to know the whole plan to make a start. I love that idea about, walking through the fog, and as long as you can see a few steps ahead of you, the fog will start to clear as you walk. And I know, in my own life, I've got friends who just feel really quite paralyzed because they feel like, what do I like? Where am I? What do I want? And they're waiting for all the fog to clear. And I don't think it often works like that. So, it's exciting because we can have different chapters to our lives. So I agree with you about being careful about taking risks. If you have got a financial way to like a part-time job or something, like don't necessarily get rid of that straight away to start a business. Think about, creating a buffer for yourself. But running a business can be the most liberating and fulfilling thing that you can be doing. And you can help so many people and you can work in a way that actually enhances your life. So, yeah, I mean, and I find it so inspiring that you've been able to integrate, the travel when you've got school age kids as well, because so many people would just automatically think, well, that's not possible. So, I think we need more people visible and more role models so that we can see what's possible.
Love that. Thank you, Erin, so much for your time. We'll link everything in the show notes. People find you, what website, LinkedIn, Instagram?
Yeah. So my website's lifefriendlybusiness.com, and then I'm Life Friendly Biz or Erin Thomas-Wong on LinkedIn.
Fine. We'll put all of that below. I hope this isn't the last time we speak. I'm sure it won't be, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I hope this episode has sparked some new ideas or challenged your thinking. Transitioning from medicine to business is not easy. It's about adapting our skills while embracing the unknowns of entrepreneurship. It can be nerve-wracking, but remember, you are not alone on this journey. Please feel free to reach out to me via direct message on LinkedIn or Instagram, or just shoot me an email at joe@bendylegs.com for support. And don't forget to grab the free PDF from the show notes, From Stethoscope to Startup, which is your go-to guide and resource for diving into entrepreneurship. Many thanks for tuning in. I will see you next time. Thanks for spending your precious time with me.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.